talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about Netflix's newest original drama horror thriller, heavy on the thriller, The Perfection. Now, this movie was pretty fucking good. I actually really enjoyed a lot of it. I would say like 75% of it. And then when a major twist is revealed, oh god, it just bummed me out for the whole fucking day. It just made me so sad and dark feeling, and I did not like it. I think they could, if with one change, if they just changed this one reveal, I think it could save the whole movie, especially considering the bulk before it was really interesting. I love the choices they made. There was like 3 different twists going on, and it all smoothly worked together. But we'll get into that. Before we do, though, may I take a moment and just remind you guys to just subscribe. And don't forget, I'm tripping over my words. Please subscribe and consider becoming a Patreon today. Now, let me read you a quickie synopsis. When troubled musical prodigy Charlotte, played by Allison Williams, seeks out Elizabeth, played by Logan Browning, the new star pupil of her former school, the encounter sends both musicians down a sinister path with shocking consequences. Ooh, great synopsis. Okay, so let's get started. First, we start off with our main character, Charlotte. And Charlotte at one time went to this, I don't know if you'd even call it a school because it's not official. It's kind of run out of someone's house. But essentially, this man, Anton is his name, played by Steven Weber. He goes around with his wife, and they find young girls who are usually in kind of rural areas in the middle of nowhere all around the world, including the United States, and they give this opportunity if they sense they have some sort of talent, specifically in the cello. Now, they kind of groom them from like very young age all the way into adulthood, so they're not only giving them the education, but they give them opportunities when they're old enough to play at predominant places, they probably make a lot of money financially, and they give them housing and all this like positive stuff when they're younger, so that when they are like basically these girls most likely wouldn't have these opportunities to begin with, considering where they were coming from. And in addition to that, most people anywhere don't ever see their dreams as becoming an artist or musician become a full-time gig ever. So it's kind of like the one and everything package. You know, you get to live a little bit better life than where you were before, in addition to having the opportunities you wouldn't. So you could see why it was probably so devastating at the time when Charlotte had to leave this situation. The reason why Charlotte left this situation was, unfortunately, her mom got sick, and she made the noble decision to take care of her mom. But it fucked her up. I mean, I do not blame her. I think this is something a lot of people experience with just the, feeling like your youth is kind of taken away from you, having to take care of someone, then the tragedy and the drama watching someone you love become ill, and feeling the guilt of even feeling anger. So there's a lot of things going on there that you can understand anyone experiencing this type of trauma. And we get little kind of snippets of her anger where we see maybe her just sitting there emotionless, sitting in a couch, looking at her mother's dead body, which I'm just like, I don't know why the 2 women in the hallway that are kind of giving the background story of like what is happening here through their conversation and gossiping weren't like, we should really get her daughter out of that room. She's just staring at her dead mom. That cannot be healthy. But when she's sitting on the couch, we'll get like a snippet of a younger version of herself screaming, and we understand like that's what she's feeling inside. So it's like a lot of like surreal takes in that way. So she's finally no longer taking care of her mother and free to kind of roam and go back into her situation. And she decides to seek out her past professor and the new star pupil he kind of has, the younger Charlotte. I think they said that when Charlotte was 14, the other girl would have been like 9. So what is that, like 5-year difference roughly? So she goes there to kind of see Lizzie, and you can already feel there's jealousy and some sort of ill intentions. And they kind of already sell that to you in the trailer, so you're already anticipating her to like be kind of like some sort of scheme to maybe potentially get her spot. Because I assume there's only so many spots available when it comes to this type of thing. Now, all the teachers are very happy to see her again, and I kind of even wondered if she would be as bold to be like, hey, I know I haven't been seen in a while, would you consider taking me back as like a student, a person to tour with you? Either way, Lizzie recognizes her right away, and Charlotte's kind of caught off guard, and her like villainous intentions seem to be kind of stripped away. So that's like the first little kind of horror vibe you wouldn't anticipate. Because you think that, like, no, I said it perfectly the first time. Sorry, I'm trying not to trip over my words. So Charlotte kind of lets her walls down, and Lizzie starts just complimenting the shit out of her. And very quickly throughout the night, they're just bonding like nobody's business. There is some... God, I talk about this all the time. I fucking hate creepy sexuality. I hate it. It's so interesting, though. I don't dislike the choice of using it for this movie, because I like to call it the Kylie Jenner sexuality. There's, like... How do I express this? It's like, okay, so the way I kind of sell it to people to explain my point is like, sexuality in all forms is fucking awesome and positive and really should be kind of held up and seen as like a positive thing. No matter the amount of people, no matter if you want to be very sexual, no matter if you're a man, woman, gay, straight, bi, all that wonderful stuff. But there tends to be this creepy level of sexuality that kind of bloomed through Kylie Jenner and a lot of these insty baddies, the way they touch their lips, the way... It's like you get shivers and you feel skeeved out even though they're trying to present such a positive thing. So when she's doing some of these creepy slow touchings every now and then, I feel like that does work with like the horror thriller element. So it's not a negative choice of the film, but I'm like, oh my god, can I stop fucking seeing this? It's the same thing as when like villains want to slowly, softly touch someone's chin in a movie. I'm like, you get away from their chin. You're fucking creepy. And you're not making me want to watch this movie again. So when Lizzie and Charlotte are bonding, it goes from Charlotte feeling like she has to kind of suck up to Lizzie and maybe has villainous intentions to kind of being like, wow, I didn't know I was such a model and an inspiration to this girl. Weirdly, for the first time probably in years of my life, I'm kind of like the star in a weird way. And they find they're kind of equal to each other in their viewpoints towards one another, how they're able to easily sense who's going to be the winner. And right away, Lizzie does not hide her attraction for her. And I can totally understand. It's kind of interesting. I don't think it gets put enough. A lot of the time, there's the story of someone being attracted to someone else because they have power. We rarely get to see the story of two people who are both really talented and have this sort of power and get to... Like, I can't even imagine how hot it's got to be for the two of them to feel like they have these equals, you know what I mean, amongst each other. So that later leads to them full-on hooking up by the end of the night and just, like, getting it on, having their good time doing each other. So they go from, like, literally potential victim prey villain situation to equals to lovers. And they even go as far to, like... So Lizzie says, hey, I'm finally getting a vacation for the first time in forever, and at this time in the movie, they're in China, I think. And so she's like, I'm gonna go around China... And, which, by the way, I have never understood when someone's in a rural country and goes and just takes a bus. And I mean, technically she has an advantage because she can speak the language. But I remember even when we were taking, when I was younger, I was lucky enough actually through an artistry program myself to go to Italy. And when we were taking the bus from the airport to the actual place we were staying, I remember having like an inner panic attack because I was just thinking, there was nothing for, like, over 100 miles. And I was like, we're just in the middle of fucking nowhere. I mean, it was intense. So, they go and take the bus together. And kind of right away in the morning, and that's what I'm saying, like, they went from lovers to, like, I mean, who sleeps with someone and then is like, hey, you want to go on vacation with me for 2 weeks? I mean, very romantic and sweet, but I guess the circumstance is very individual because this is someone she admires and as far as she knows is right, sound, and mind. So when they go, unfortunately, Lizzie gets horribly fucking ill. Like really bad. Like they have to pull the bus over and she's shitting herself. And it gets so bad that she's like slamming her head against the window and she's screaming that she's gonna die. And this is the thing. It's to a certain level you want to be like, girl, I know you're in pain, but fucking Christ, stop throwing your head into the window. But I think that's the level of how terrible it was, and it really kind of right away you start to think that something seriously bad's happening because we hear in the background that some sort of disease or something happened. Somebody got sick or something like that. We see someone got sick. It's contagious potentially through air or whatever. And now Lizzie's thinking maybe she got this rare, weird kind of new coming up disease. And all the time when she goes to throw up, you see bugs. There's bugs in her fucking stomach. It gets so bad and she's so sick, the bus driver throws her the fuck off the bus. And Allison's trying to care for her. And this is when I first start seeing like this metaphor developing in the movie that I actually really liked. Allison is kind of tired of fucking being the caregiver for people. It was something that really defined a good portion of her life and took away something that really made her happy when she was like on the verge of all this potential and stardom, something she worked so hard for. I imagine she feels probably like in that moment she's in robot mode, easily taking care of Lizzie, knowing how to do it, but I think subconsciously it's probably fucking with any possibility of them actually romantically having a relationship. That's all I could think was like they're going through the gigs. But then Lizzie's suffering from this weird fucking, like, bug disease coming in her arm. Again, when I was watching the trailer, it makes it seem like maybe Allison potentially got her sick and wants her to be infested. And I thought the movie was a little bit on the verge of, like, actual bugs, actual sickness kind of an effect. And so bugs are calling out of Lizzie. She's freaking the fuck out. She's losing her mind. There's all this drama gets built up, and I keep calling her Allison. Charlotte convinces her to chop off her own hand. And right when they could show the gritty, nitty-gritty stuff, I love the choice they made. They pulled away. And she does a rewind effect. This happens a couple times in the movie. You see a whole chain of events. You get lost in it for like 25 minutes. And then they rewind it. And they get you the perspective of what really is happening, what really happened. So what happens is we get insight that there were no bugs. Technically, Lizzie wasn't even fucking sick. It turns out Charlotte did pick on her specifically. I don't think she had anticipated such a love affair to happen. I don't think she knew how it was going to happen. But what happened was she gave her some of her psychotic medicine she took, and kind of would say suggestive things that would make then Lizzie see things that weren't really there, kind of playing on her mind and convincing her to chop off her hand, which is crazy, fucking sadistic and terrible and horrible, and you're immediately like, fuck, Charlotte, get a grip. And we even learned that she at one time went to a psychiatric home because she was in such grief and disarray because of her mother. So we have like a background of her not well qualities, so to speak. I even loved when we got these moments where Charlotte would look at Lizzie's little like music note tattoo on the back of her, and she had one as well. And so you almost think like, man, Charlotte must have been obsessed with Lizzie, got it herself, right? So you already think, okay, cool, Charlotte successfully beat Lizzie, she wasn't someone to beat, successfully like gaslit her and got her to chop off her arm and everything like that. What's her next plan? What's happening? Well, Lizzie ends up trying to go to Anton and says that it gives the background information that she wasn't able to do anything because she was the one that took the drugs. Lizzie was the one that chopped off her own arm, and by the time she was like calling the police and trying to do anything about it, Charlotte was already out of the country, so there really isn't anything she can legally do about it. And the worst part is Anton tries to be tender about it with his wife, but they essentially have to, like, in so many words, throw her to the curb and be like, listen, you don't have a purpose musically here anymore, so we can't really, we can't offer you a place to stay. We need the room for other people, which is incredibly insensitive and sad, but I mean, it's just unfortunately the case, but it sucks hearing that when you're like, but I've given you all my, life, my talent, my time, and you're just gonna throw me away like that. But that's just unfortunately the fucking situation. Unfortunately, because Lizzie has suffered this physical trauma as well as mental trauma, she decides to go to Charlotte's home, kick the shit out of her, put her boot to her face, and show up to Anton's house with her in the trunk. She literally says, you didn't want me unless I had something to offer. So I got something you want. I got the bitch. That's what she says. She goes, I got the bitch. And he's literally like, what the fuck? Because she's just parked out of his house with this dead serious look. And it's such a great metamorphosis of her facial expression compared to how it was so gentle and free-spirited beforehand when she was performing musically. She even did this beautiful duet with Charlotte. It's just totally different. Like, isn't it funny how if you put people through enough, they can just change on a dime like that? Totally understandable. So eventually, Charlotte is brought to the couch where she comes out of it all dirty and smudged in the same outfit she had when she was in the kitchen. And she is faced by Anton. The first thing she says to Anton is like, where is she? Am I okay? Like, because, obviously she just got fucking kidnapped. She's aware of kind of what happened. She could put two together very quickly. And she tries to say, Lizzie's not well. But Anton points out the fact that he believes and is aware that Lizzie's arm got chopped off because of Charlotte's gaslighting. So he's like, honey, you're not well either. And she goes, I know. Or she's like, that's true, but I did it for her, to protect her. And he goes, protect her? From you? She goes, no, from you. And this is where it starts to get fucking sick. Okay. Trigger warning for people who have suffered from any sort of assault. Okay, this is where it gets really dark and it gets ruined. Essentially, in the way this school works, because this is both a school but also some sick psycho prison of some pervert, when the kids are playing music and they mess up, they get, I'll just put it simply, something happens to them that no one would want. And this sometimes happens with one or multiple people. It's very negative and scary and sad. And so what happens is, he immediately knows what she's referring to. And he puts her in a red dress and he chains her up and he forces her to perform. And he says, if you don't perform, and he brings out a little girl, that he will, I'll just say, punish the little girl if she does that. And she's begging, no, please, me, not the little girl. And I'm surprised the little girl isn't like, teacher, why is she in chains and look like she's crying and really traumatized? This little girl is like the most robotic little girl. Now, she performs musically, and then the little girl's ushered out, and he says he's still gonna punish her anyways. Like I said, do you see what I'm saying? Like, how is this fun? I mean, it's so disgusting and gross that he leaves, has his minions help, and Lizzie's going to help. Yeah, Lizzie's going to help with this. So she literally at one point was going to take her, the kind of, I'll just call it the nub, the part where the arm was chopped off, and going to shove it in, into her. Do you see what I'm saying? Why would anyone want to fucking see it? Who's like, you know what? I want to rewatch this terrible trauma. This is fucking horrible. But right before she can do anything, it's about to happen. The other people are holding her down. Charlotte's screaming. The two men that were a part of, in her past as well, part of the abuse, and currently a part of the abuse, just seem to keel over and choke and die terribly. And then Charlotte doesn't look panicked anymore. Lizzie never looked panicked. They make out. And you're left going, what the fuck? And that's another twist. It rewinds again. So we've got 3 twists now. The first of Allison and getting one over on Lizzie and gaslighting her. Then the second is the background history of these girls and this particular school, and the real villain really isn't maybe Charlotte, but in fact Anton. Now the third twist. We get a reverse right after Lizzie had broken into Charlotte's home and kicked the shit out of her and put her boot on her face. She stops and kind of has a moment of regret and says, I should kill you. But she's kind of having this moment of thinking about it. And Charlotte explains, I'm really sorry that I took your arm. I really am. But I wanted to go there, and I knew and I saw how deep you were. You would never leave him and the situation you were in if you weren't shown how he'll throw you in a moment if he can't get anything from you and kind of free you of it. Which seems totally psychotic, but to be fair, Lizzie totally agrees and is like, you're right. And that becomes more of the importance of, like, because Lizzie admits, like, she too went through that. I mean, that's what Charlotte says. Charlotte says, when I saw that music note on your back, I knew instantly what you had to do to get that. And I couldn't watch you or anyone go through that again. So the whole kidnapping scheme was just that, a scheme. Charlotte was totally consensual in the idea. Lizzie acted as if she was on Anton's side, when in fact she drugged everybody else up so they were unable to fight and kind of out of the way. And the last person who was left was Anton. So Charlotte and Lizzie put on their little, I'm about to get terrible revenge sweatsuit outfits, and they attack Anton. Unfortunately, in the situation, while they do have some successful stabbing, I think he takes Charlotte's arm. Like, something happens, like he takes her arm or something like that, if I can remember. And this is when we get the big ending, like, ooh, they got their revenge, but ooh, really, did they? So at the very end, we get this horrifying image of Anton with both of his arms chopped off and sewn up, his mouth sewn shut, and his eyes sewn shut. So he's in this very mutated state. And they are then performing together, the two girls performing together symbiotically. So Lizzie is the part of the cello where you would move your fingers up and down, and Charlotte's the bow of the cello, and they're kind of like playing as kind of like Siamese twins, because Charlotte has one arm missing and Lizzie has her hand missing on the neck, so it's kind of like they're complementing each other. And I guess their giant fuck you is playing for him together in front of him, and all he can do is listen like they used to, but they're kind of in power and they've mutated him. But okay, you can see where I'm very much disconnected at this point with it. So I'm just going to say this lightly, and because I try not to, I sometimes find myself a little bit too political and stuff like that, and I want to try to make this like a fun, happy podcast, but I think just needs to be said realistically. 1 in 3 people experience this, and I don't think this should be such a common subject people jump to in television movies. People try to go there to be entertained and free of their worries and their experiences and stuff like this. And I just don't think that this strengthens most entertainment or film in any way, shape, or form. Now, I think that they should have changed it where if they still needed him to somehow seem like the villain and somehow seem like this unhealthy relationship between the girls like Lizzie and him and their teacher. But I think that one change they should have changed was the like physical abuse, just like maybe he beat them or something, or punched them, or he electrocuted them or something. I know that's still terrible. And people suffer from that type of household or situation they're in as well. I'm not saying that's any better, but I think we can agree that point kind of makes it. I just think. Oh, I'm walking on threads here. I just think it would have been a better decision to get a point across. And, oh God, I think you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying the other stuff isn't as serious, but I think we can all agree the change would have been a lot better. And it also doesn't, especially with the type of abuse that's sexual in connotation, I feel it's weird that it ends with them playing the music for him in a kind of major fuck you, when it just feels like you're doing the same thing he made you do before. You think you're doing it for yourself against him, but you're really just doing what he made. It didn't feel powerful to me. Now, if they were somebody who had been like potentially like hurt and abused physically in that way of like punching or something like that, not in the other way, I think it would have been more of a powerful statement at the end, and it would have clicked and made better sense. So yeah, it was a movie with a lot of great twists and great ideas, and even the overall concept of, like, I understand, I thought was, like, a good choice, but, like, fucking Christ, can we just be done with, like, the whole sexual abuse thing? Like, I'm really tired of it. It's very emotional and exhausting to watch, and it just bummed me out. And, like, this is the biggest thing I have to say to all movies, not just people who, directors and people who are, like, make these creative choices. Do you want me to fucking watch your movie again? Don't most people hope they have a sleeper hit that can be watched a million times? I mean, most people, I think, in a way, would love that. And that's why I ask people when they make those type of creative decisions, or just the type of decisions that maybe are a little too dependent on, like, you watch it once, that's the twist, you'll never get anything from it again type of movie. I just look and I go, I think, you know, there's a way you can change this to make it more rewatchable. And a perfect example is this is a horror movie. I don't think many people are going to be pumped about the ending or really want to rewatch it. That's all I gotta say. It's too much. So yeah, I hope you can listen to this podcast and save yourself some trauma you do not need. Very dark note to end on, but that's just how it is. Have a good day. Bye.